I get eager scrolling through endless listings of gaming monitors that promise buttery smooth 144Hz action, eye-catching colors, and true G-Sync, only to end up with a panel that looks great in the photo but feels flat, laggy, or just plain underwhelming when you finally plug it in. That frustration is real, and it's why I'm diving deep into the Acer Predator XB271HU before you click Add to Cart. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, the biggest question most buyers ask is whether a 27-inch 1440p IPS panel with a 144Hz refresh rate actually delivers the competitive edge they need for fast-paced shooters, while still looking decent for content creation or movie nights. The short answer: for most serious PC gamers and hybrid users, it hits the sweet spot, but there are a few nuances that can turn it from a great buy into a compromise you might regret. Let's start with the visual experience. The 2560x1440 resolution on a 27-inch screen gives you roughly 109 pixels per inch, which feels noticeably sharper than a 1080p panel of the same size, yet it doesn't demand the same graphics horsepower as a 4K display. In my testing, games like Valorant and Fortnite ran at well above 120 frames per second on a mid-range RTX 3060, and the monitor kept up without dropping frames, thanks to the native 144Hz panel. The IPS technology also means color consistency from edge to edge, which is a big plus if you dabble in photo editing or stream overlay design. You'll notice that the sRGB coverage is solid, and the colors stay vibrant even at the corners, something you typically lose on VA panels. Now, the G-Sync integration is where the Predator really earns its name. Because the monitor supports NVIDIA's variable refresh technology, you can let the GPU dictate the refresh rate, eliminating tearing and stutter. In real-world play, that translates to smoother motion during those chaotic firefights where your frame rate dips from 150 frames per second down to 90 frames per second. The difference is subtle but measurable. You'll feel less choppiness, and the mouse feels more responsive because the display isn't fighting the GPU. This is especially useful for competitive titles where split-second timing matters. However, the monitor isn't a perfect match for every scenario. One hidden trade-off with IPS panels is their contrast ratio. The XB271HU delivers a typical contrast around 1000:1, which is fine for well-lit rooms but can feel washed out in dark scenes when you dim the lights. If you watch a lot of movies in a dark environment, you might notice blacks that lack depth, and that's something you won't see on a high-contrast VA panel. Also, the peak brightness tops out near 350 nits. While that's more than enough for most indoor gaming setups, it falls short if you expect a strong HDR experience. The monitor does support HDR10, but the limited brightness means you won't get the punchy highlights you see on premium HDR displays. Ergonomics are another practical consideration. The stand offers height adjustment, tilt, swivel, and pivot, which is a nice inclusion for a 27-inch screen. In practice, you can set it at eye level whether you're sitting at a desk or a gaming chair, and the pivot lets you switch to portrait mode for coding or reading long documents. The only downside is that the base is a bit bulky, taking up more desk real estate than a minimalist mount would. If you have a compact workstation, you might need to rearrange your peripherals to accommodate it. Connectivity-wise, the XB271HU includes DisplayPort 1.2 and HDMI 1.4 ports. That covers most modern graphics cards, but if you're hoping to use a newer HDMI 2.1 source for higher refresh rates at 1440p, you'll be limited. The monitor won't accept 144Hz over HDMI 1.4, so you'll need to run a DisplayPort cable to unlock the full 144Hz experience. It also has a USB 3.0 hub, which is handy for plugging in a webcam or headset, but the hub shares bandwidth with the main display, so you might notice slightly reduced data rates if you're transferring large files while gaming. Who should consider this monitor? If you're a competitive gamer who wants a high refresh rate without moving up to a pricier 4K panel, and you already own an NVIDIA GPU, this is a solid middle ground. The combination of IPS color fidelity, G-Sync, and 144Hz makes it a versatile tool for both fast shooters and more color-sensitive titles like Assassin's Creed or Control. It also works well for streamers who need a reliable display for both gaming and managing chat windows, because the portrait mode makes it easy to line up multiple windows without sacrificing screen space. On the other hand, if you're a pure HDR enthusiast, a movie buff who watches in a dark room, or someone who primarily uses a console that outputs over HDMI 2.0+, you might feel shortchanged. The limited contrast and brightness mean HDR content won't look as impactful as on a dedicated HDR monitor, and the lack of HDMI 2.1 could be a deal-breaker for next-gen console gamers who want 144Hz at 1440p. Likewise, if you have a modest graphics card that